Today I'd like to talk to you about air suspension. Is it really worth it to be putting on your car? Depending on your usage of the car, it may or may not be, but the intent of this video isn't to turn you off from air suspension. It's to just kind of give you a couple warning signs whether or not you should really do it. Is it right for your car? I just recently had a blowout with the rear suspension. The suspension on this car, I had all custom fabricated. My father and I did it. It was mainly my father. He has many years of fabrication experience. So in this case, it really helped me out. So with the suspension on this car, I purchased it from Performance Airlift about 2 years ago. It was their universal setup. So that being said, it all had to be custom made, particularly to fit this car. My father, with his experience, he was able to get the camber adjustment correct and to be able to make it work for this car. So with that being said, the rear air suspension on the car, the rear shock and bag combination, with it being fabricated to the car and being custom made, there were a lot of fitment issues early on. So I had to space out the wheels here and there. I had to get the height adjustments correct. So me not having the suspension totally dialed in, I had some fitment issues where there was rubbing on the bag. So when my wheel would be driving without my spacer being on the car, it would actually be wearing on the bag. So then I realized it was an issue and then later put a spacer on it. Now, just recently, about a year and a half, a road trip, maybe about 5,000 miles put on the car, it just finally popped. Thankfully, it wasn't while I was driving, it was just while I was moving the car. One morning this past week, I come in the garage, start up the car, lift it up, and within a few moments of it being lifted up, it just popped and the rear end just sagged on the ground. So, called up Air Suspension, Performance Airlift in Michigan, and all American made, good quality stuff. The reason why it broke was totally my fault, and I made it clear over the phone. So with the type of setup that I got, it being the universal stuff, they didn't exactly have a warranty for it. So I have to pretty much pay out of pocket, which kind of sucks. But then again, really good customer service. They were able to help me out a lot. For the service of replacing the actual bag itself on the shock setup, they knocked it down, I think $25 each per side. I just figured I'll get both sides done, even though one side popped. But putting air suspension on your car definitely causes a lot of issues. It's not like regular shock and spring suspension where it's basically all mechanical and it just works. But with this suspension, when you install it on your car, it creates more issues. Wired the entire thing. I had to get a compressor, I had to get a tank. This is all just standard stuff. I had to get the suspension welded in. Just doing the suspension, installing the air suspension in itself is a project. Big project. I think in total it took me about a month. It's a lot of work to get it all dialed in correctly. Now, if it's something, for example, they make for your car, Performance Airlift makes air suspension from E26 M3, so that kind of stuff is a lot easier. When it comes down to fabricating stuff for your car, it's a lot more difficult. So I went with the fabricating route because nobody makes suspension for my car. So it was definitely a journey to get it done. It was very worth it to get it done. I mean, it definitely sets the car out from the crowd, and for me it was worth it. But I've had a couple issues with it. I had the blowout. Not only that, but my compressor started having issues and just stopped working altogether. So I need to get a new compressor. I'm also having a lot of moisture issues with moisture and water getting into the tank and then into the bags from inflating and deflating it. So there's just a lot of babysitting when it comes down to doing air suspension. And a couple things I had to do when doing the entire setup, you just have to make sure that just in case your compressor does decide not to work, I decided to do a fitting on the tank. If it doesn't work, you just hook it up to a compressor and you can pump it right up that way. But with this type of suspension, you're always going to have leak issues. There's always going to be something about it that's going to be very annoying. So there's a lot of work and a lot of babysitting when it comes down to air suspension. Me saying that, it's not worth putting on your daily driver car. If you have a car that you daily drive and something that you want to make look cool, if you're like me, you can't leave a car alone, you have to constantly mess with it, which is fun and it's great, but on a daily driver car, it's not worth it. So me, I have multiple cars. This car isn't a car that I daily drive. I would never want to daily drive it and, you know, have a bunch of nicks and scratches on it. But it's good to have a car that you have aside from your car with air suspension that, you know, if something does ever go wrong with this car, you could drive that other car wherever you have to go. So if you have only one car and you want to put air suspension on that car, it's not entirely worth it unless you have a girlfriend that's willing to deal with you if your car breaks. But, you know, I don't exactly have that, so I have multiple cars that each one has different issues, so I at least have one that at least gets me wherever I gotta go. But I mean, it's a fun setup. I'm not trying to turn you off from it. I'm just trying to let you know that there is hidden costs with doing air suspension to your vehicle. I also do recommend quick fittings instead of the tie-on ones, just so in case something like this does happen, you could just be able to pull it out instead of having to wrench it and just being a total pain altogether. So with my rear bags blowing out, it's pretty easy to take it apart on this car. It's a lot easier than the front. You just have to lift up the rear end and take the bottom bolt out and do the 3 bolts on top and unscrew the airline and take the hose out, because I have quick connect fittings, which is pretty easy. But I mean, in total, for this particular car, it works for me. It works for the car very well. Very happy with it, but there's going to be issues. So just letting you know that air suspension, I guess, isn't for everybody, but if it's something that you really want to do and something that you really feel like you should do, and you have multiple cars that you could use, and then it'll work for you. But there's a huge price and difference opposed to if you do it yourself or if you have somebody do it for you. And if you have somebody do it for you, it could cost a lot of money. It is very expensive. Just for the universal stuff, I spent just about that. On top of that, having to buy the tank, the compressor, doing all the lines and everything. And if you do it yourself, which you can, I would recommend it if you know what you're doing. If you're pretty handy with cars and this isn't your first rodeo with things you fixed on a car, I would recommend that you buy it outright from somebody that already has it produced and already has a line of these products. And all you would have to do is essentially just wire it up. But when you do things like this, you have to be very careful. It is a very serious deal. You want to make sure that all of your lines are away from any heat sources, so it won't melt and it won't create a hole in your airline while you're driving. So you need to be very careful with how you set it up so it stays away from any spinning parts or things like that. And you need to make sure that it's very well fastened to your vehicle so it's not hanging. You kind of want to treat it as if you were doing a fuel line on a car. It's very, very important. So you want to make sure that everything's very well assembled to your vehicle, and you just want to make sure that you don't endanger yourself and others. So it was kind of stupid on my part to just kind of let that problem linger. You always want to take care of any problems on your car if you know what it is very quickly, or if you acquire your new car, you just want to make sure that it's inspected and you know what you're looking at. So problem on my part, but thankfully it wasn't on the road. I don't drive the car all that much. So taking it to Performance Airlift in Michigan, going to send it over to them, and I should receive it back in at least 2 or 3 weeks. And with car season coming around, I'll be able to enjoy it again. So thank you so much for watching my video. More videos to come. Please subscribe, and to be doing more car reviews and lots more car stuff. So thank you for watching. See you next time.